Hello and welcome to From the Grind Up, the place where endurance sport meets the bigger picture. Here I bring you race previews, training insights and personal stories that inspire the grind on and off the course. And this weekend the grind takes us to London, where the best triathletes in the world take on the T100 London Triathlon event. It promises to be an epic showdown and I will be there on the ground covering it. So if you're into triathlons, marathons, or just love seeing people push themselves to their limits and finding out why, hit that subscribe button and find out what comes next. Now in today's show, we've got the latest insights on the course, the contenders, and some predictions for both the men's and the women's race in what promises to be an absolutely epic showdown with stacked fields in both camps. But first, let's have a look at the course. So as a reminder, the 100 in T100 stands for the total distance that the athletes cover during this event. So they start off with a 2-kilometre swim, which in this case is 2 laps of 1 kilometre in the Royal London Docks, just outside the Excel Centre in Docklands in London. It's a pretty straightforward course, just a straight rectangle that they go around twice, with a decent stretch out to the first buoy and decent stretches in between the buoys as well. So I don't think we'll see too much in the way of washing machine effect in play here, helped by the fact that it is smaller fields than we see at some of the Ironman or WTCS events. So it'll be fairly level playing field as far as the swim's concerned. Onto the bike, we then have 80k. And this is comprised of 10 laps of 8 kilometres each. And again, the course looks pretty straightforward on paper, just straight out and back. It's pan flat, but there are hidden surprises all the way through this bike course. The roads around there are incredibly narrow and they are laced with potholes, speed humps, rough road surfaces, and some roundabouts that can be pretty tricky and tight to navigate around. So if it looks straightforward on paper, the reality could be anything from that. Now, it does look like it's going to be a course that will favour the really strong cyclists, those that can push out higher amounts of power and have good aero. It's not an uber technical course, and it's not one where power to weight is really going to come into things. So I think it's going to be one where those strong bikers are really going to try and stretch things. But due to the nature of the course, it's also going to be ripe for packs being formed. And I think this is something that could be pivotal. If you end up in a pack that is too big, passing is going to be very difficult on tight roads. And with them using the Race Ranger technology and with the 20-metre draft zone, trying to get yourself from back to front of a pack is going to take a huge amount of effort. So I think people who are coming out of the swim further back are going to struggle. I think that there are going to be drafting penalties in this race, and hopefully they don't have too much of a significant impact on the overall result. And then onto the run course, it's 18k, rounding up to our 100k in total. And this is 5 laps of just over 3.5k each, around Docklands and going through the Excel every time, finishing inside the Excel where all the transition zones are, where the amateur triathletes for Sunday will be racking their bikes. The atmosphere there is going to be amazing. Now, it's another flat and not especially technical course. There is one dead turn on it. But other than that, there is plenty of out and back where the competitors will really be able to eyeball each other and see how each other are feeling. And I think that tends to play into the favour of those really strong runners, those who are on the hunt, trying to claw people down. There's not much opportunity for out of sight, out of mind on this course. The weather is looking good, and with the age group racing that is going to be going on all weekend on both Saturday morning and Sunday, but with Sunday athletes having to rack their bikes on Saturday, I think it's something like 6,000 amateur athletes in total that are going to be competing. So the crowds are going to be amazing. The weather's looking great. People will be out in full force. I'll have spectators with them. Like I said, I'll be on the ground soaking it up myself. I am really looking forward to seeing both races and actually following some of the amateur races as well. I think there's going to be some fierce competition there. But back to the pros. And let's start off with our women's T100 London preview. So first up, we have our top contenders, and here the field is really stacked. So we have the top 6 contenders in the current T100 standings here competing in London. So to go through those in reverse order, first up we have Ashley Gentle, who has been a little inconsistent so far this season, it has to be said, after a few years of just absolutely dominating this distance. She was near unbeatable for 3 years until Taylor Knibb came along last year. But this year she struggled with a 6th and 11th and a 5th so far. And it's been the bike that has let her down a little bit so far. She hasn't been able to keep up on the bike in the same way that she has been before. And even with such a strong run as she has, she's been too far away to really capitalise on that. I think that's going to be the big story for her this weekend, is can she stay in close enough contention to be able to make the most of her exceptional run? In fifth place, we have Lucy Charles-Barclay at the minute, who is still on her way back from injury. She DNF'd here in London last year, which then led to a period on the sidelines. But since she's come back, she has found some good form with a third in Singapore, a fourth in Toronto, and wins at her favourite Ironman, Lanzarote, and 70.3 Eagleman. One of the big things for her is going to be, can she get away on the swim? I said it's not going to be a particularly challenging swim, but actually I think sometimes that can play into the hands of the better swimmers, where they haven't got tough conditions dampening their advantage. If anything, for me personally, I feel like it stretches their advantage at times. I think one of the things that could be key for her in this is whether she can be at the front of the swim, which she undoubtedly will, but then make the most of that to get a gap on the bike with our fourth placed contender, who is Jess Learmonth. The Olympic medalist has had, I think, what we can call a progressive year so far, with a 13th and a 7th, a 3rd, and most recently a 1st place in 70.3 Nice. Now, can she get away with Lucy and or others? I think it's going to take a few of them to be away together at the front to really make a difference. Because I think realistically, she is going to need a gap getting into T2 if she's got any chance of being on the podium with some of the runners that we have in this field. In third place, we have yet another Brit, Kate Waugh, who surprised everyone on her T100 debut in Singapore when she took what was an absolutely convincing win. And then she backed that up with the third place in Toronto, but I know that she wasn't especially happy with her performance in that event, despite what was an incredibly solid day out. So if there's room for her to improve on what was a third place against a very deep field, then that could spell trouble for the rest of the field here. Interestingly, it's also her first time competing as a professional on home soil. So whether having that additional support of family, friends, and just the British crowds who we know will come out in force for this event, whether that will help lift her to an even higher level, I think she's got a very, very good chance of being in the mix here. Then in second place, we have the one and only Taylor Knibb. And if I just read this out, she's the current T100 world champion. She is the 70.3 or Ironman 70.3 world champion. She's currently ranked number 1 in the world. She has won every single T100 event that she raced last year. And this year, out of the 2 that she's raced, she has a first place and a second place. She is just an absolute phenom on the bike. As a reminder, she went to the Paris Olympics last year, not just to compete in triathlon, but she also represented the USA in the cycling time trial, going up against the best cyclists in the world. So she has a huge amount of bike power. And I think it's going to be a case of whether she can be close enough on the swim to keep up with Lucy and Jess in particular. And also whether she can actually make the most of that bike power on this course, given that for someone who's used to training in Boulder, Colorado, where the road surfaces are silky smooth, here in London, they're going to be much more rutted. I've spoken about the potholes, the speed bumps that there are on the course, whether that is going to hamper her bike power and stop her from being able to get a gap as she so often does. Because I think she will need a gap going into T2 as well, particularly over the likes of Kate, and our first place contender, who is Julie Derron, arguably the fastest runner in the sport at the moment. She won the San Francisco event early this year and came second to Taylor in Toronto. And she also took her first win at an iron distance race in Vitoria-Gasteiz just 4 weeks ago. And I think that is going to be key, how she's been able to recover from that. I caught up with her yesterday and she seemed very confident that her and her coach, Brett Sutton, had put the right steps in place to get herself into the right shape to be backing up. But I know from experience that doing an Ironman, it is the run legs that suffer the most or take the longest to come back. And when the run has been such a significant weapon for her, any kind of diminishing of that could prove critical for her. So those are our top 6 key contenders. I just wanted to highlight a couple of other dark horses or outsiders for this event, and they are both Brits. So first up we have Holly Lawrence, who amazingly under a year ago gave birth to her first daughter, Poppy. And this isn't her first race back, it's not her second race back, this is her 4th race back already. Only I think it's like 10 months ago that she had her baby and is doing her 4th race already, including her first full distance Ironman that was just 3 weeks ago in Lake Placid. And her results have been unbelievably consistent, amazingly consistent since. I think she's been 5th or 6th in every race that she's done so far. So she's going to need a lot to go her way to be up in the mix this weekend, but racing on home soil again with all that support. Now, I wouldn't put it past her making a bit of a challenge, particularly now that she is getting a bit more experience under her legs. But it's just whether that Ironman so close to now is going to take that edge off. And then finally, we have Georgia Taylor-Brown, the 3-time Olympic medalist, taking on the T100 distance for the first time, only her second ever middle distance try, and fresh off of competing at Super Tri over in Toronto just 2 weeks ago, where it's the uber short racing, so where they're swimming like 300 metres, cycling for 8k and running for 1 or 2k, but doing it repetitively. So I think it's an interesting thing about whether she's going to be able to back that up okay, but also this is a year that she said that she's taking away from the sport. So this is her kind of down year, but she's still out there competing in all of these different events. But for her, it's been more of a mindset shift, she told me yesterday. It's about refocusing, reprioritizing, and actually spending time when it comes to training, just out enjoying life, not being there completely working herself into the ground all day, every day, which you really need to be doing to be competing right at the sharp end. She's all in it for the fun now. And that's something that's really resonated with me over the last couple of years. And from a personal perspective, what I found is that actually taking that pressure off can lead to some quite exceptional results. So I'm interested to see this weekend whether that could be one of those exceptional results, whether the release of the pressure from Georgia actually allows her to have an incredible race. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. So in terms of my predictions then for this race, I've given you 8 different contenders. To be honest, I could have gone on listing more. This field is so deep. But I'll draw a line under it for there, and out of that 8, make my prediction as to how I think it is going to land. So in first place, actually, let's flip it around. Let's go third to first. So in third place, I think we are going to have Lucy Charles-Barclay. In second place, I think it will be Taylor Knibb. And in first place, taking the win on home soil, I think will be Kate Waugh. I think Kate's going to win it by a decent margin. I think maybe not quite as significant as Singapore, but I think she will come into T2 with a group, probably including both Taylor and Lucy into T2. And I think she will be able to run away from them. Now, what we've seen so far this year is that Taylor and Lucy have relatively similar run times. And my hot take is that I think we are going to see a sprint finish between the pair of them for second and third place. My money is on Taylor to just edge it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So that wraps up our women's prediction. And now it's the turn of the men. So my preview of the men's T100 race in London coming up this weekend. Again, it's another hugely stacked field with all bar 2 of the top 10 ranked athletes in the T100 standings here in London. But most importantly, we are missing Martin van Riel, who is the number 1 ranked athlete. So his absence will then be interesting how that all plays out and who will step up into his void. Leading the way in that charge is going to be his fellow countryman, Jelle Geens, who is a top class runner, probably and arguably the best runner in the sport at the minute, certainly at this T100 distance. And he is in superb form if we put a DNF in Singapore aside. And because of his strong run and excellent form, those strong bikers are going to be ultra keen to drop him on the bike. He's much lighter than some of them, particularly the likes of the next 2 that we'll speak about. I won't break that surprise just yet. He's much more slight, far less power, but thinks he stands a good chance with his technical ability through some of the twists and turns that we will have on this course. Albeit small, he sees that there is an opportunity to capitalise on that and make sure he stays in the mix. And key to that, I think, is going to be getting to the front of that bike pack early. As I said, with it being the course the way it is, we are going to get a big pack. And if you're trying to come from the back of that through, it's going to be incredibly tough. So he's going to want to make sure that his short course transitions and swim background put him at the front coming out of T1, and that some of those stronger bikers are going to have to come right the way through a pack. So that's going to be key for him. And if he gets into T2, even with a gap to the front, if it's any less than 2 to 3 minutes in front of him, it's his to lose, surely. My second contender to talk about is Rico Bogan, probably the best cyclist that we have in the sport at the minute, or certainly in this T100 field. He is super strong on the bike, but not only that, he's very aggressive with it. He's not afraid to hit the front of that pack and really drive it. He's not one to sit in and save any energy. If there's an opportunity to get to the front, he will take it and try and get that gap. Now, that aggression on the bike can sometimes come back to bite him, which we've seen in a couple of the races so far this year, where his run has really suffered as a result. And key for him, I think, is going to be finding that balance between getting the right level of aggression on the bike so that he stands a chance of dropping Jelle or some of the other fast runners, but without absolutely blowing a gasket himself. And I think he might get some support in doing that from our next contender, who is Mika Noodt, the young German athlete who was pretty unlucky, I would say, in Toronto. He got a drafting penalty with Race Ranger technology. You could say that all is fair, but we'll come on to that again in just a moment. But he put in an exceptional performance. He lost the front group on the bike because of that penalty, to drop back by a minute because of that penalty. But by the end of the bike was able to get his way back up and then put in a great run to take third in that event. Now, if it wasn't for that penalty on the bike, I think he could have been right up there pushing for the win. Having spoken with him yesterday, he thinks that this course will suit him well. His power to CDA, his drag is very good. And he is definitely out there trying to make amends for Toronto. So whether Mika and Rico can get away together at the front, whether there's anyone else that is willing or able to go with them, could be pivotal for both of them. And Mika is a very good runner, better than Rico. So Rico might then be a bit concerned about taking Mika too far with him. So I think, again, it's another element of interest as to how does that dynamic play out. And my fourth key contender is Mr. Consistent so far in the T100 events, and actually in his racing altogether. He's just been very, very consistent with where he places in these races. Is the New Zealander Kyle Smith. And he's another that got a penalty in Toronto, somewhat controversially. Some might say he was calling for VAR on it when he received the penalty. He certainly felt it wasn't deserved and is hungry to come back and get his own back on the course for that. He's also probably one of the gutsiest racers I've ever seen. I will certainly never forget the San Francisco race last year, where it was a three-way sprint for the finish. It was Kyle, I think Rico, and Martin Van Riel. Kyle just got pipped at the finish and proceeded to be sick just after he'd buried himself so deep. And will he have to go as deep to get the win this weekend? With this field, I've got a feeling he just might have to. So those are our top contenders for this event. I've got three dark horses for this one, or outsiders. I mean, you could put an argument for none of these really being outsiders, but each of them has, I think, a particular set of circumstances that makes it so. So first up, we've got Mr. Yo, Sam Long. Now, Sam is an exceptional athlete, but for some reason, he seems to really struggle at this T100 distance. I don't know whether because it's the bike and run are both a bit shorter and the swim slightly longer than a 70.3, but he just always seems to be that little bit too far behind out of the swim to be able to properly catch up on the bike and the run. And I think that's going to be key for him today, is can he get out close enough to the front packs? I've already spoken about how tough it's going to be to pass people on this course, and I think he's probably going to be the one that is going to be most disadvantaged by this. But he undoubtedly has the talent to do it. He's taken 2 70.3 wins and had 1 second, I think, so far this year in tough courses. So he's definitely still got it, but for some reason it's just not coming together so far in the T100. But this could be the event that changes that. Next up, we have the Olympic silver medalist and the guy who comprehensively won the Singapore leg of the T100 this year, and that is Hayden Wilde. So having an outsider as your Olympic medalist and a former winner of one of these events might seem a bit crazy. But what makes Hayden an outsider for this is the fact that he had a pretty horrific crash just 9 weeks ago or so on the bike, where he suffered broken ribs, I think a punctured lung, and various other injuries, a collarbone as well, I think. So the fact that he is back racing already is a near miracle. And I'm just not sure he's going to have that absolute edge, certainly not to dominate in the way he did in Singapore, where he won by over 2.5 minutes. But we don't know what's going on. So he may well be coming back strong. And I've kind of got a feeling that if he wasn't in shape to be competing for the win, he wouldn't be here. But I think time will tell on that front. And then finally, we have Leo Berger, who I think is a guy who tends to fly under the radar quite a lot, and I don't think gets the credit that he deserves. So he was second in Singapore, which is his only T100 event so far, and he was bronze medalist at the Olympics in Paris last year on home ground for him, and also at 70.3 Worlds last year. So he's had some brilliant results, but the focus doesn't tend to go on him. And I wonder whether that will be the case again on Saturday and whether he can fly under the radar with his competitors and spring a shock surprise. He's another lightweight guy, a bit like Jelle, so he's going to have to be close on the bike to be able to keep up with that. That is going to be the critical factor for him. But again, I wouldn't put it past him. So that's my wrap up of the contenders. So let's go on to the predictions. So again, we'll go 3, 2 and 1. So in third place, I reckon we are going to see Hayden Wilde make the comeback from injury with a podium spot. In second place, I think Jelle Geens will be there. I think he will be behind coming into T2 and will run his way through to get second place. But I don't think he's quite going to be able to catch our number 1 ranked prediction, which is Mika Noodt. I think Mika is going to have just about a big enough gap on Jelle getting into T2 that he will hold off for the win. He seems really motivated, seems really well prepared, and I think this is going to be his race to take the win. So there we have it. That is my preview and predictions for the T100 Triathlon in London this weekend. And now it's your turn. Let me know how you think it is going to pan out in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you see my race recap after the event, and follow along on my social accounts. I'll put the handles on screen just now. I'll be providing some live coverage throughout the day on Saturday, and I'll be there for the amateur event on Sunday as well. So if you want to see what's going on, want to hear some stories from athletes, pro and amateur alike, give me a follow on those and I will keep you in the loop.